Now, today we're looking at one of the genres of literature, and that's drama. In an earlier video, we looked at, some of the elements of literature. We talked about setting, plot, character, and then we talked about theme. And I promised to do a video on each of the genres of literature. So this video actually is an attempt to look at some of the things that you find that are exclusive to drama as a genre of literature. My name is Olabode Ajayi, and this is high school literature. What is drama? Let's start by looking at the definition of drama. Now, drama is a genre of literature that is realized in performance. So, drama essentially is performance-based. Prose is a private affair. Poetry, well, not so private, but drama is an entirely public affair because it involves several people coming together to watch a presentation on stage. So, drama is a performance-based genre. It is a genre realized in performance. According to Aristotle, Aristotle looks at drama and he says that drama is the imitation of an action. For him, he sees drama as someone trying to imitate, copy the actions and or the activities of some other persons. Bertolt Brecht feels that drama shouldn't just be performance-based solely and only. For him, he believes that drama should be able to serve as a tool for social and political change. In all, for me, I basically see drama as a composition in poetic or prosaic forms. Now, all what I've just said basically is very simple. You can summarize all of what I've said in one simple sentence, and that's the fact that drama is simply a genre of literature realized in performance. For the next few minutes, I'll be discussing some things that you find very, very exclusive to this genre of literature, that's drama. Let's talk about the stage. The stage is basically the elevated platform that dramatic presentations take place. So dramatic presentations take place on a stage. You have all of the actors and actresses come on stage and they give their performance on stage. Number two, I'll be looking at the actors and actresses. Basically, these are just characters. You have a long list of actors and actresses that is called a cast. A cast is a comprehensive list of everyone involved in a dramatic performance. Everyone involved in a dramatic presentation is called an actor or an actress. So, another terminology for that is character. Now, every work of drama would come to us in acts and scenes. The acts involve the major divisions that you have in a work of drama. The scenes are the smaller divisions, and these scenes actually relate to different places, different locations that the work of drama has been set. So you could have a set in front of the king's palace, you could have another location in the king's bedroom, you could have another location somewhere in the garden, somewhere on the street. So all of these locations are called scenes in a dramatic performance. Okay, now let's talk about dialogue. Now, dialogue basically refers to the interaction, the conversations that you have between at least two characters on stage. So when two characters come on stage and they begin to talk to each other, this one says something, the other one responds to it, that is a dialogue. They are not limited to two. Listen, you could have more than two characters on stage. One of the things I want you to understand is the fact that dialogue propels action. The dialogue, the conversations, the speeches that are made on stage drive the action on stage. When a character comes on stage, he says something, either something that has passed, something that is happening, or something that will yet happen in the nearest future. So he says something to somebody else, that other person responds, and based on what they say to us, we have an understanding of what has transpired, what is transpiring, or what will yet transpire. So dialogue, moves and propels the action in dramatic presentations. Now, the monologue is a lone speech given by a character on stage. So when a character stands on stage and he addresses other characters without being interrupted, that is a monologue. So it delivers a long speech. A soliloquy is a long speech delivered on stage by a character in the absence of other characters. So you have one character on stage speaking and nobody is on stage. There are no other persons on stage. Every other person can hear what he's saying. However, a soliloquy is not just a speech, it is actually the deep thoughts of a character expressed in words. It is not as if the character is literally speaking to us, but we get to peer into the mind of this character and hear his mind speak. So it's more like putting a microphone into his thought process and having this voiced out to the hearing of everybody. So nobody's on stage. He's just thinking. Just imagine yourself, you are by yourself alone, something just happened to you, whether good, bad, or ugly. You are there and you are contemplating your next line of action. You begin to wonder, should I do this? Should I refrain from doing this? Should I call this person? Should I email the other person? All of this stuff begin to go on in your mind. When you put a microphone to this thought process and someone is able to hear them, in drama we call that a soliloquy. A character can be soliloquizing, can just be talking to himself. He may not even know he's talking to himself. But based on what he or she is saying, we have an idea of what is going inside the deepest recess of this particular actor or actress. Now, that is yet also distinct from what you know as an aside. Now, in an aside, you have a character on stage, you have another character on stage, or several other characters on stage. And as an aside, one character, having had a conversation with a character on stage, steps away from him. And he might face the audience. Usually, that kind of a character would face the audience. So he looks at the audience and he tells the audience one or two things that the other characters would not hear. I give a very good example. Imagine someone is going to dupe another person. So he gives him a form to fill and says, fill out this form. And then just append your signature. In fact, don't bother filling, just append your signature to this. And based on the fact that the form that this other character has been given is perhaps long and he's trying to rush somewhere, what does he do? He appends his signature without even reading it. In the course of appending his signature, the fraudster who has given him that document steps aside and he begins to tell us that, look, I intend to get him in trouble. All I need for him to do is for him to sign. The moment he signs, he has committed himself. Okay? Just keep quiet, don't say anything. And then he comes back and says, oh, fine, you have signed this. Thank you very much. It has been nice doing business with you. And then he shakes him and he walks away happily. What he has done by stepping away from every other active participant on stage, without their knowledge, please notice, without their knowledge, stepping away to tell us the implication of what that other character is doing, is called an aside. So an aside is a character speaking to an imaginary person, stepping away from other active participant on stage to reveal an intention that is most likely not known to those other characters on stage. That is an aside. An aside is different from a monologue, and a monologue is also different from a soliloquy. Now, not all dramatic performances have a narrator. Some would have a narrator, some might not have a narrator. In modern times, it's called a narrator. In ancient times, it's called chorus. In the days of the Greeks and the Romans, they had chorus, a group of old men who sometimes might or might not interact with characters on stage. The chorus actually come in, or the narrator comes in to give an information either before a drama presentation commences or at the end of a dramatic presentation. So all of these things serve to give us further information about certain actions that perhaps might not even happen on stage. So they come on board, they tell us this, and then they get off the stage. The same with the chorus. Flashback is a literary technique or device that a dramatist employs to distort the flow of time. When an event of the past is brought to the present, that is an example of a flashback. The opposite of a flashback is a flash forward. When an event of the future is brought to the present, that is flash forward. I will take that again. A flashback is a scenario whereby we are given an information about something that has happened in the past by virtue of a dramatic presentation. A flashback is a distortion of time. We might not even know of an event that has happened, and the dramatist needs us to be aware about this thing. So a character sits down and he begins to think about the past. As he's thinking about the past, in one corner of the stage, light goes dim on him, and it comes up on another set of people that might even include the character's younger self, and a dramatic presentation goes on. When you get to watch this dramatic presentation, it is done in such a way that it serves to provide an information into something that has happened. So I am here and I think about the past. As I think about the past, I begin to reminisce about the past. The only way you can get into my mind is when you have this acted out on stage before a real life audience. So a flashback is a literary technique employed by the dramatist that attempts or that actually distorts the flow of time. The opposite of a flashback is a flash forward. It's just the direct opposite. So a flashback gives us an information about the past. A flash forward gives us an information about the future while we are still in the present. To foreshadow simply means to give us a hint, an idea, either by virtue of someone saying something, okay, or a bad omen happening to someone in the present. So when something terrible happens, it sometimes serves as a hint of what is to come in the future. A very good example in Shakespeare's Macbeth, one of the witches pricks her finger and blood oozes out. That act itself, just before they encounter Macbeth, tells us later on that everything about Macbeth going forward will turn out to be bloody. So we are therefore not surprised when Macbeth murders King Duncan. He takes to murdering Banquo, while Fiennes, his son, escapes murder. And then he goes to the house of Macduff and he murders virtually everybody there. So it's one murder after another. And all of these things have been given to us as a hint when one of the witches pricks her finger. That mere sight of blood dripping from her hand gives us an insight that the future holds something bloody for Macbeth. But there is no way we get to know all of these things until we get into the future. Irony is simply a literary technique that simply helps us to understand that what is meant is not what is intended. So a character means something, but he intends something else. Irony comes to us in three different forms. You have the verbal irony, you have the situational irony, and then you have the dramatic irony. And the verbal irony simply tells us that when a character says something, he actually means something else. So there's a sharp disparity, there's a sharp contrast between what the character has said and what he intends. So I'll give you a very good example. A teacher steps into a classroom and then everywhere is so quiet and he says, "Well, there's so much noise in this place." That is an irony. There's so much noise, this place is so noisy. What he's saying is actually not what he means. Another example of irony is to have someone step out of his house. As he steps out of his house, he encounters a bad weather. And so he looks up and says, "Oh, what a very fair weather we have today. The weather is very, very beautiful." That is an irony. He has said something, but he does not mean that. So for verbal irony, if a person says something on stage, but it means something completely different. In situational irony, the situation usually does not turn out the way people expect it to turn out. There's a certain expectation that we all have about certain organizations, certain persons, certain institutions, and so on and so forth. So we expect that they would perform up to this level. When that does not happen, and something very terrible happens that completely, surprises everybody, catches everybody off guard, that is an example of a situational irony. I'll give you a very good example. Imagine hearing that fishes are drowning. Okay? So you get to a pond and discover that all the fishes in the pond have drowned. You would always begin to wonder, you begin to wonder, how does a fish drown inside the sea? How does a fish drown inside water? A fish is at home inside water. So why should a fish drown inside water? That is an example of a situational irony. The result of a fish being in water negates a fish drowning in water. Another example, okay, maybe you might be able to relate with this one, is to have a fire station, get burnt down by fire. So we'll have a fire station all the fire equipment, everything gets burned down by fire. That's kind of weird, because these people are supposed to save people from fire situations or fire outages. Another is to have a police station burgled by armed robbers. So you have a bunch of armed robbers enter into a police station and they rob everybody. Once that happens, what you have is a case of situational irony. For dramatic irony, the dramatist employs this device in such a way as to give the audience some information that many characters in that dramatic presentation are not privy to. So when characters are not privy to certain information that the rest of the audience, the people get to watch it, have access to, what you have there is a case of a dramatic irony. I'll give you a very good example. If you watched or read this book, Oedipus Rex by Sophocles, that drama is a very amazing, wonderful drama. By the way, that drama has been written as The Gods Are Not to Blame by Olarotimi. Olarotimi gave us a writing of that text, brought that text from ancient times into modern contemporary times for us to understand and appreciate better. In that text, you have a king there who vows to get to the bottom of the problem in his kingdom. And he vows, he begins to rain curses and abuses and says, look, I'm going to make sure I bring whoever is behind this problem down to his knees. I'll bring the person down to justice. But the irony of all of these things is the fact that we find out later that he actually is the pus that he seeks to expunge. So he is a problem, he is a chaos, he is a cancer that he's seeking after to expunge. Eventually, when he finds out that there's a problem, what does he do? He goes on exile, he takes out his eyes and he goes on exile. The word props is used in drama and it's actually a short form for the word property. So every accessory that you have on stage, tables, chairs, calabash, everything that you can move around on stage is known as the props. Then you have the lighting. The lighting is also very important in dramatic presentations. In ancient drama, you have the use of curtains. So to end a scene or to end an act, you have curtains actually come down and characters exit the stage. Curtains cover everybody. But in modern times, we usually don't have curtains. You have the use of lights. So the lightning comes on to reveal a character on stage or at a particular point, at a particular location on stage. By the time that person's presentation is over or performance is over, the light goes dim. When all characters are on stage, light comes on. When characters are done, the light also goes dim. You also have the use of sounds. Whenever you have when you get to watch films and something terrible is about to happen, the mood and the tempo in the film changes. When you have a romantic scene, the tempo also changes, the song also changes. All of these things are very, very crucial also. You find some of these things used and deployed by dramatists in the writing and the weaving of an amazing drama. The sound will change just to reflect the mood that you have on ground. You have the use of makeup and costumes. Costumes help characters to change and transform. But the same also goes for makeups as well. With makeups, an old person can look young, or a young person can be enhanced to look old. With the use of a costume, a single character can play several roles and you would never know. Now I'd like to talk about one other area in drama before I call it a day with you guys. And that's the issue of the subgenres of drama. Drama is essentially divided into three parts. There are three types of dramas. You have the tragedy, you have comedy, you have tragicomedy. There are several others, but please don't bother yourself about the others for your level. Okay, all of the plays you'll be reading and working with for examination, and even in your classes in your schools, will actually be classified into any of these three: comedy, tragedy, and tragicomedy. Now, in a nutshell, a comedy is a work of literature, a work of drama that has a happy ending. It is essentially designed to make people laugh, to evoke fun, sometimes also to ridicule people. Dramas that actually are called comedy are essentially designed to poke fun, to make people laugh, just to make light of perhaps even difficult and heavy situations. Comedies end on happy notes. Now for a tragedy is the direct opposite of a comedy. For a tragedy, it is almost a tragedy involves someone dying or someone who has fallen from a highly exalted position. So when someone dies, when you have a fatal situation, someone dies, at least one person dies, someone who is very key and crucial dies in a very, very tragic manner, very, very terrible manner, you have a tragedy on your hands. When someone also falls from a highly exalted position, you have a tragedy on your hand. For example, Oedipus Rex is a very good example of a tragedy. Oedipus does not die, he plucks out his own eyes upon discovering that he had married his own mother and also had children, about 3 or 4 children by her. The mother kills herself, so that play comes out to us as a complete example of a tragedy. The same also goes for Macbeth and Othello and King Lear and some other works by Shakespeare. Now, a tragicomedy is a blend of tragic elements and comic elements. In a tragicomedy, you have characters who actually might have begun on a very terrible note. Someone has died, someone has been killed, someone has been terribly, fatally injured, someone has fallen from a highly exalted position, someone has been dethroned, someone has lost fame, prestige, honor, titles, glories, But then eventually the whole play turns out to end on a very happy note. A very good example would be Romeo and Juliet. I see Romeo and Juliet as an example of a tragicomedy because Romeo dies, Juliet also dies, but then the families are reunited at the end of it all. So that is an example of a tragicomedy. I do hope that you've learned something in this video. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, or if you have any areas that you disagree with me or you want me to shed a little more light, you can please leave your comments in the section below and I'll get right back to it. Thank you so very much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye.